Welcome, everyone. We've had one half of the volleyball season, about one half of the volleyball season underway. So we wanted to give you a check on what's going on in the South Dakota high school volleyball landscape. So we're bringing in our friends from Adrenaline Volleyball, Hayley, Dotseth, and Darren, Tipton. First of all, how have you guys survived here this first half of the season? It's been a little different, but kind of crazy, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're really thanking all of the streaming services right now, making our jobs a little bit easier. And we've honestly been able to cover just so much more volleyball this year because of the streaming and because we've gotten a little bit more help, from our Adrenaline family alum and things like that. So surviving a little bit more at home than we'd like to, not as much live volleyball, but still, having a good time watching all these awesome athletes.
Yeah, it's been good. We've watched probably more volleyball than we had even at this point last year. And like I said, we have our little mini team of 4 or 5 part-time employees that are helping us out on Tuesdays and Thursday nights that are watching. So coverage is growing. It's been different. I think what's been different is it's been harder understanding where every team is at and what everybody's going through. You watch the matches, and we talked a little bit off camera, who was missing, why were they missing, or they, those types of things. And it is different just not being in person in the gym, but we've watched a lot. And first of all, we're just thankful that the season's gone on as it has, and we've got to see so many of these kids that we followed all off season as well. So it's been good, and we're adjusting like everybody.
Excellent. Well, today we're going to do an overview of Class AA, Class A, Class B, some of the top contenders. We're going to talk about some of the surprises that maybe happened in the first half, and we're going to end it up with a little bit of projecting into the second half of the season, what we're looking forward to the most. Let's start in Class AA. We just had a great week of matches last week, and one of those matches last week was 1 versus 2, or at least our 1 versus 2, Washington versus O'Gorman. And we saw there's a little gap there between O'Gorman and the rest of the crowd. Tell us just kind of what you guys have seen in AA and maybe who can contend, maybe play with O'Gorman.
Well, and I'll start. One thing with O'Gorman that I noticed, and Hayley, knows much more technical and understands the game, the game plans and those things. Let her touch on that. But one thing I see when we talk about teams in general, we look for a few things, especially at the high school level. One, what's their talent level? Everybody knows that O'Gorman has a very talented team. 2, how do they play together? And they really enjoy playing together. Their chemistry is there. They don't have highs and lows, or they don't have lows, and that's danger for the rest of the state. Because they play so well together. I think they understand their roles. They have a lot of kids stepping in that have stepped into bigger roles that maybe got some time last year and now, and you never know how that's going to go, right? And so the O'Gorman, there is a gap, and it's amazing as you go through. They dropped their first set of the season last week to Western Christian, but to go through a AA, we talk about how much parity there is. To go through the first half of the season and not drop a set, especially with the city rivalries and some of their scores, they've been on every night. And I think it's a tribute to just how, their leadership, how they play together, and their talent. That's what I see when I watch O'Gorman anyways.
Yeah, definitely. And, we kind of talked yesterday, just catching up before this kind of check-in. Just has so many different weapons. Not only do you have to stop Reagan Riley, but you have to stop Bergen Riley. Okay, after you stop Bergen, you have to stop Bangford, and then you got to stop Lubbock. There's just so many different weapons that they have. Steffel, just an entire roster full of different players that can score the ball. Your entire team just kind of has to be on, and it takes so much more to kind of get them on their heels. So you just have to find different ways to attack them. I think, in order to beat O'Gorman, a team's going to have to serve really, really tough, and then be able to dig their attackers.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing, we want the rest of the state, but I think that's kind of a credit to, maybe a Reagan Riley who just has that calming. They don't have the big lows, right? Where they just don't give up that 5-6 point run, or they haven't yet. And we've talked for a couple of years, right? Like that's the difference, especially in AA when it's so difficult. And you look at some of these other teams, when they've lost matches, they all go through a big slump, and that can be the difference. And I really think that's the calming influence, is kind of how it appears that Reagan kind of leads. And, the other one too is Brent Askew has had a great year, over the libero, just really solid. Their defense has been so good, and then all those weapons. So yeah, there's a reason they're undefeated and reason they're number one right now. But there's also some teams that are talented in the AA.
Yeah, before we kind of move on to some of those other contenders, I just want to get your comment, Hayley. How impressive has it been for Bergen Riley to go from primarily setting to getting 5 kills a match in being one of the top hitters in the state this year?
Yeah, especially, swinging. Last year she was more of that right side, running that 6'2", moving to the outside, maybe a little bit different of a swing for her. And she's still so young. I mean, she's just a sophomore. I think we all forget just how young she is, and obviously an incredible athlete with a lot of athleticism. But it takes a lot of volleyball IQ and smarts to really step up into that role. When again, there's so many other players that can score the ball. That's a huge positive for Coleman too. But the other team's blockers, they have to watch all 3 hitters. So Reagan does a really good job of spreading the ball out too, and that does all her hitters a lot good.
Well, and I think to jump in on that, we talked to another AA coach earlier this year, and it was a ranked matchup, and she was like, we couldn't keep tabs on where that dang Riley was. Like, one time she's on the right side, we blinked over left side, and I'm yelling at my setter, like, keep it away from her, and they moved her away. And so the diversity they had and her ability to be able to move all over. And, but the other thing too is, like, we saw it on Saturday when they went on one of their big runs against Northwestern. They had 6 kills in a row, and it was all from their left side. And now one of those points was Reagan Riley. They found a mismatch somewhere and on their left side, and it was Lubbock and Bangford, as well. And so that's what makes them, I think, really dangerous, is you can't just key on Riley.
Right. Yeah. Now, AA is easy to talk about O'Gorman and how good they've been, but there's some contenders here, and I want to get your take on maybe which of these teams will rise to the top and challenge O'Gorman. Washington, maybe. Watertown started out really well. Aberdeen has quietly been lurking there. Huron has been in the rankings, and then there's some teams outside of there, Lincoln, Harrisburg. I mean, give me your take on AA and maybe who can contend with the Knights.
Yeah, well, when we talk about taking down, such a powerful and solid team like O'Gorman, my mind immediately goes to those teams with such a solid senior presence, and with that is that Aberdeen Central team that you just talked about. They're 9-1 on the season. They have kind of their Sioux Falls teams coming up towards the end of the year, so we'll see how that travel schedule works, for them. But you have Kusler, who's a Player of the Year candidate. Grace Myrie, who's been a setter for years, Kaylee Fouth, Hannah Keel. Those are all solid seniors that have been in that lineup for years. And I think they really would take that emotional leadership to push a team like O'Gorman to get them on their heels and really kind of take them off guard almost in a way, and just run with it. As soon as you take a little bit of confidence, that's the entire match right there.
And I think if you're looking at another team as far as just talent-wise, and again, upset anybody, where there's great players in every team, but if you just look top to bottom on the roster, Washington would be that team that probably has, would you agree, that has the most talent? And we've talked about the talent on O'Gorman, and that's why I think last week was kind of a surprise. It was 3-0. With Washington, they've been really, really good. They've been good. It's just that consistency. But they definitely have, talking about the Richardsons this year, stepping up, names out of nowhere, to go with Shetland and to go with Ellie Walker. They have players all over. Their defense probably has to improve to knock off a team like O'Gorman. But first of all, it's a city rivalry, right? So I think with any of those Sioux Falls schools the second time around, I just anticipate those matches maybe being closer, but that's what I would look at as far as a team that has talent. The offensive power to score on O'Gorman, that would be my key. They have some their defense has to improve to knock them off.
And I think, to go along with Washington, they just got a new player in Jacqueline Wenentanda, that new middle who had 25 kills in their win against Watertown. She took a year off volleyball, so she's just a junior. I believe she's a junior, but coming back to the sport of volleyball, and I think her offense kind of picked up a little bit quicker than that block, but throw a 6'3" block in front of O'Gorman's going to make a huge difference. And just getting a few more touches, slowing that ball down, so their defense can pick up a few more balls and really make that difference. Because, again, they do have that offensive power to take on a team like O'Gorman.
And we talk about Huron every year, and Jason, you and I have talked. I mean, Huron plays defense, and that's the thing Shelley was a little bit disappointed with early in the season. They weren't playing a defense. I think it showed in the Watertown match. They made some lineup changes. They're playing much better now. They beat Aberdeen Central, I think last week in 5. But with Huron, it's going to be, do they have the offensive firepower to beat a team like O'Gorman, right? And knock them off in 5 sets. And again, what's just different, going to take a solid match on both ends to do it. And these teams, at least when they've played O'Gorman so far, they haven't quite done that. But Huron would be the team. And Tinley Budenhagen, and I know we've done a touch on her. She's got her 200 set. Really an underrated player, even though we've talked about her quite a bit. It doesn't get some of the attention. She has turned into a very, very good all-around setter for them and runs things. And so they're trying to work in some new pieces. They will be better by the end of the year. And so that's a team you can just never overlook because they won't give away free points. So in tournament play, that's really important as well. And then Watertown, the state champs, we haven't even talked about them, but earlier in the year, what do? We had unranked or whatever at the beginning of the year. They make that big run. Then they get knocked off in 5 by Aberdeen Central. Washington got the rematch with them. I think there's about 5 teams in Watertown, brand new senior class to a lot of us, right? If you ask them, they were playing a lot of volleyball. They just were behind a lot of those seniors last year, led by probably Maggie, I would suppose. And Anna Johnson does a really good job. Olivia Corey is kind of an all-around player for them. And then you have Stanton and Emerson Smith was each 50. Just really solid team. And I think they play the best together, other than maybe O'Gorman. They're probably the best all-around team as far as fitting in. Again, it's just they have enough firepower offensively to knock off O'Gorman because they're playing really, really well. So.
Well, I think that Watertown's been the biggest surprise. And like you said, they're probably not surprised because they've had these players backing them up for a while. But that's been the biggest surprise for me. Would you agree with that in AA? Are there any other teams that you've been surprised by in this first half?
No, go ahead, Hayley.
No, I mean, I think Aberdeen Central, with kind of missing out on the state tournament last year, they're definitely a surprise. To me, again, with that huge senior class, I'm not surprised that they, kind of figured out how to put a run together to set themselves up well for that, the first half, at least of their senior year. But I don't know. The thing about AA is it's so hard to beat a team 3 times that, maybe O'Gorman has this hot start now. And some teams kind of figure out a little bit of what makes them tick. Maybe they can knock off 3 3-point runs or something and figure out that difference. But yeah, that's the thing about AA is you're going to have to beat a team 3 times. And that 3rd time is going to have to be at the state tournament.
Right. And I think Watertown, James, your question, they started so well and they were playing so well from the very beginning of the season and just really businesslike. I saw the week that they played. I think they had just beaten Roosevelt and then they just beaten Washington in 5 sets in that great match at Sioux Falls. And then they turned around on Tuesday night, came to Harrisburg, took care of them 3-0 and then 3-1 over Huron, who at the time we had number 2, and they just were so businesslike, and they just, they're playing so well right away now with a little bit of illness and some tweaks in their schedule, and then they dropped the rematch, dropped a couple matches, but they've been in everything. So yeah, Watertown, again, like you said, they're probably not surprised, but were a surprise to us just based on there were so many new names off of last year's state championship team. But we also know this, Rosemary has done a great job installing a program now there. And when you're a part of a program, right, along with a lot of these other programs, it's my turn, right? And they step up. They have great players. We talk about this more in AA than any other class. They just didn't maybe get the court time they would have because they were playing behind other great players. So, yeah, I'd say Watertown, maybe on a statewide level, Huron a little bit just because people didn't really know about them. We saw them. We're really impressed with them this summer and good. But they're just always that team that just kind of seems like the Rodney Dangerfield, if you will, right? Like solid team, just don't get talked about quite as much. They had a little bit of a rough start. Watertown took care of them, but those would be my two surprises, I guess. And then Pierre, we talked about Pierre, and they've been shut down a little bit. Talk about Pierre just because they replaced so many players.
Yeah, I think Pierre is definitely younger than they have been in the past. And I was up there for an impact camp just this summer, and they're a serious group of girls. I mean, they're ready to kind of make that change and become, one of these stable programs. And I think Coach Keenholz and the whole crew is doing such a good job of setting expectations. Maya Keenholz, the setter, is doing a really, really good job of being that senior leader. You know, she was the one setting the goals at camp. She was the one getting on her underclassmen. So, again, a younger crew than before, but with those staple senior leaders.
And they've only got to play 4 matches,
yes.
I think, so far, just due to the scheduling and everything. So watch out for Pierre, but maybe a little bit young because they are replacing a lot. But just if you were a wild card team for us, and then talk about the end, but we'll talk more about Lincoln. But
yeah, I guess one other team that has given me a little bit of surprise is Brandon Valley. They've gotten off to a solid start as well, and that's just one team we haven't talked about because there are so many solid teams in this mix, but I think you guys did a good job covering AA. We're going to move on to Class A now, and maybe we got a little preview of the state championship. Last year's state championship for sure, Dakota Valley against Sioux Falls Christian. First of all, any reactions to that game last week, 1 versus 2 in Class A?
Yeah, I'm actually super lucky. I actually got to go to that match. So crazy environment to be in. 2 coaches that just know what they're doing and have built solid, again, programs that we talk about year to year. Dakota Valley was missing Wilshire, kind of like we spoke on earlier. Not sure, whether that's due to injury, how long, that kind of thing. But that was the first game that they played without her. So I think it took a little bit for their defense to kind of catch up. I mean, that's a 5.5 rotation player that you're missing, no matter who you replace that with. That's difference in communication, tips, rolls, all that stuff. Serve, receive, that's a huge, huge part of the game. And I think Logan Miller, I mean, she's impressed us all year long. New setter for them after Beersford graduated last year. But just their whole team really stepped up and kind of helps that new libero kind of step into her role. And I think it maybe just took them a step too long to make that adjustment. Because Sioux Falls Christian, again, is just firing on all cylinders at every moment. Kind of like Matt O'Gorman, they just have so many different weapons. Abby Blanzer, obviously, Timms, Pater, Kelsey Ferd just does a really good job of mixing the ball around. So.
Yeah, and Van Egum played really well in that matches too. And so in Sioux Falls Christian, the thing that I've noticed, because we watched the Madison match earlier this year, Madison had them down early, almost took a second set from them. That was a great match. The difference really was that Sioux Falls Christian, every time, at least I've watched, and again, Jason, you and I don't know the X's and O's of volleyball, but I just watch more the body language and the chemistry. Sioux Falls Christian does not panic. So they've been in so many big matches, and kind of Dakota Valley as well. And that's what showed up that night. And Sioux Falls Christian just does not panic. You are going to have to beat them. They are not going to give it to you. And they got off to a much hotter start, I think, against DV than they had earlier when we saw them against Madison. But yeah, I think there's a great chance. I'm hoping the DAC-12 tourney is still on, because I think there's a chance we get to see that rematch then. And then a great chance we see that in November in the state title. But as of right now, and with Wilshire in the lineup, I think that's coin toss. And that's why we got some great comments, but we were, we put them as tied for number 1 for a while in our power poll, because they've beaten 3 ranked AA teams, and how do you not? And so two solid volleyball programs and teams. And Rosenquist is another one at a great weekend. The Pentagon was kind of their go-to right now. But, the thing with all these teams is where are they at now? Who are they missing in a certain match? But I think if you look at overall talent, it's probably those two right now in Class A.
Yeah, I agree. Those two kind of set themselves apart. But are there any contenders in that next group? I've seen some really good talent out there. I've watched Madison. Abby Brooks is hitting like 5'11" or something crazy number like that right now. Winter has got a great group back. They were missing a couple players over the weekend and took a few losses. But how do you assess the rest of Class A for contenders?
Yeah, I think Madison's been on our radar for a while. Again, a lot of that is due to Abby Brooks. I mean, just an incredible player that just kind of blew up out of nowhere starting last year, and then just is taking the reins of her senior season and kind of pushing her team to win at all possible. But huge block. Again, when you talk about the offense of a team like Sioux Falls Christian, and the kind of different ability of Dakota Valley to move the ball around, Abby Brooks's block is going to be huge in getting touches and helping her defense get some more balls up. But Sophia Vandenbosch, too, has really been impressive to me this year, just stepping up in those early matches against some of those ranked opponents.
One thing with Brooks, too, that a lot of people might not realize, she's improved her overall game. Mm-hmm. She's serving for him now, and that was not a strength a year ago. We saw that this summer, the Future 50. It was like, you've been working on that. And she's like, yeah, I kind of smile. Just such a great kid. And those kids, you're really excited to see them do well and have the success. But she is amazing at the net. And one of those, replacing a setter, Grace Nelson had graduated last year. That's always, an adventure with some teams. How that's going to go, it seemed to have gone well. And honestly, it's how Madison grows for that, because they played very, very well. But like we talked about with O'Gorman and like we touched on Sioux Falls Christian, a big part of that match was Madison just had a little bit of a dip and gave Christian a run and let them get back into it and didn't close them out early when they had the chance. And then he kind of saw some of the doubt from some of the underclassmen peeking in. So that's going to be the biggest thing for Madison. But they have talent to play with them and have played with them. The other thing is they've been in a lot of big matches the last couple of years. So Abby, Annenbosch, some of their other players have been in those matches. It's just getting that signature win again, like can we beat them, or a mental hurdle maybe. And then you touched on Winter, and we always laugh in the office because we're like, they look like as athletic of a team as there is in the state. Thus their basketball success every year, right? And they are a very athletic team that we were surprised on Saturday until we found out they were missing some players. It's too bad because we were using that as a measuring stick of, okay, we're going to see exactly where Winter is. But they've been in the state tournament now 2 years. They went to 5 with Christian last year in the opening round. I think a lot of those girls have confidence. It's just seeing them put it all together on the right night. So would we be surprised? I wouldn't be surprised to see them knock either of those teams off in a tournament setting. It's just they haven't had quite the schedule that these other two teams have had yet, and they have to get healthy.
Well, I don't know about you, but there's been some surprises for me in Class A this year, and there's a lot of, undefeated or one-loss teams. We're talking about Garrettson, Wagner, Rapid City Christian, and Hill City who've been building over the last couple of years. Who surprised you in Class A this year?
Yeah, well, I'll have to talk about Rapid City Christian because I was out there again, too, this summer working with their team. And maybe a 14-0 start is a surprise just with the amount of wins you can pull in a row. That's a huge stretch of time, without dropping a single match. But just a team that is literally like a family. They all care for each other so much and are just so excited to be in the gym all the time with each other. I know they were super involved with each other over the beginning of the pandemic, just on Zooms all the time, all doing their home workouts. They did accountability for all their home workouts. So definitely a program that's building and sets those expectations. Led, of course, by Riley Freeland, who is at our Feature 50 this summer. Just a great kid who is ready to, have that success. I asked them their goals at the beginning of the year, and it was a state championship. It's not a secret to anyone. They want success, and I think that's huge for them, and I think they're really building confidence right now.
They played Hill City just this last weekend, and they had a duel, and it was a tournament style, so they went 3 sets. Last set was 25-23. So I think both of those teams, I don't know, they would consider themselves rivals. We look at it as a rivalry the last couple of years because they both have a senior-dominated lineup, some solid senior classes. They both have those goals. They're even. They're going to play again here in a couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see how that match goes. But as we looked at the kind of the breakdown of postseason and how the SODAC 16 might shake out, there's a chance this year, and it'd be the first time I think ever that Black Hills would could possibly get 2 teams in the Class A tournament, and they're there. We talk about our forecast, talk a little bit. They have a tournament coming up. They're going to Northwestern for a tournament, both those teams. So I think that'll be a big test for them. But yeah, 2 solid teams there. Also Garrettson. And Garrettson made the SODAC 16 last year, came up short. I think they had everybody back. And it's a team, we've watched them. We're still getting to know them. Hadn't seen them a lot. But they have to be there. They've knocked off Chester twice. They dropped a match to Parker. I think they have the rematch coming up with Parker. But some of the names, I apologize. I'm not good on their names, and we just follow them, but they're just a solid team that, again, we're learning about. So they would have to be a surprise because they didn't know much about them. They just kept winning, and they've knocked off, I think, 4 schools in the DAC-12 already, which are quality wins. And, you know, they're one of those teams. I just don't know how to gauge them against, Christian or Dakota Valley.
Yeah, when it comes to schedule-wise, especially, that's the difference between AA and A and B is that they don't play every team, and you don't play them multiple times most of the time. So it's just so hard to compare schedules and that sort of thing. But yeah, the only loss Garrettson has is to Parker, which again is another team that had such a hot start to the year. I think they started out 8 or 9-0.
Right.
And I think they've kind of lost a few of their players due to sickness and stuff like that and had a rough weekend. But they've had quite the schedule so far. I mean, you talk about, that's one of the biggest things for these Class A programs is to knock off a Sioux Falls Christian and a Dakota Valley who play AA teams and beat AA teams on the regular. You kind of have to maybe take some losses during the year in your schedule to really push yourself. And I think that's what Parker's doing this year.
And just to jump in, one of the things we've seen is we get to talk to a lot of coaches. One thing credit to like Hill City and a Rapid City Christian, I've really been trying the last couple of years to come, and again, East River, West River, whatever. They understand they need to add more solid matches, and them getting into that tournament, Northwestern, we've talked about they've tried getting some more matches like that, the best that they can. So you kind of look at strength of schedule and who they play, but Garrettson has some quality wins. You don't beat Chester twice, and if you're a poor team and a poor program. And Coach Northrup, who was at Aberdeen Central for the longest time, is their second-year coach there, and so the second year he's retired. He's just coaching and doing a great job there. So they probably fundamentally pretty sound, but obviously we need to do more homework on them the second half of the year. So
yeah, we'll keep an eye on them as well as some of those other teams and see if anybody can contend with Dakota Valley and Sioux Falls Christian. But I think we agree they're right now, at least they're a step above the rest of Class A. Let's move to Class B now. And we had Northwestern finally lose. It took a AA #1 undefeated team to take them down, though. That's saying something. Your thoughts on Northwestern and how they've regrouped this year despite losing, one of the best setters they've ever had.
Well, and that's funny that you say that because we said that this summer to other seniors, and they did not like that at all, right? Like they didn't think they were regrouping. We didn't know coming the summer, right? And it's, mum's the word. We weren't getting any insider info out of Northwestern who was going to be the setter, but that's a huge question, and we knew they had City Shell coming back, Jocelyn Haven, who we just love, Ella Haven. They had a lot of players. Mila plays a ton of girls, doing it again this year. They get girls action in big matches, but to me, and we noticed it this summer, Hannah Schetzel is someone that everybody needs to know about. And we just say that because we missed on her in the Future 50. And she was injured and we didn't get to see her a lot. She was a role player last year. That kid We have fist fights in the office trying to figure out who's the Class B player of the year and who's the best player on that team, and so she's somebody that really was unheard of. So talk about a surprise. That's probably the biggest surprise player for us. And she was the same way at SummerSlam. Everybody plays hard, and they play so well together. And I didn't know losing Maddie how their leadership would be. This senior class is tremendous leaders for them, and not only they play O'Gorman, they played 4 matches in a row, which is awesome. And they we talk about these top programs. They literally have the attitude, we'll play anybody, anywhere, because it makes us better for the postseason. Now, to lose what potentially would have tied the state's longest single school win streak by losing to O'Gorman is tough, but you know what? That's just the way they do things. And it's a really solid team. And even more impressively, they hadn't lost a set this year either. They lost 1 set in 2 years. So it was a tremendous run, and they look pretty tired after that match, but a great team for sure. And we've all talked about them. But I just think Hannah Schetzel needs a shout out because she was definitely off everybody's radar coming into this year. And she is a very, very good volleyball player.
Yeah, and go ahead. No, go ahead, Hayley.
Northwestern kind of runs not maybe a standard 6-2, but Schetzel hits for at least 3 rotations, sometimes a bit more, with Brooklyn Halverson, who's actually our Rising Stars this summer too, as the other setter. But just with kind of a unique rotation, and with all their players being able to do multiple things, it just makes them that much harder to defend when they're already such a hard team to defend to begin with. And with Sydney Schell, I mean, she had 96 kills just last week, was the Max Preps Player of the Week this week. But yeah, just a solid overall team. You talk about not missing a step. They hit the ground running this summer.
Yeah, well, and they're just motivated. That's the program, and it's next one up. And them coming. And we already touch on Ella Haven, who's a great player, and you put her on other programs. Yeah. She's an all-state caliber player playing for them. They got a little Stoltenberg, who does a nice job for them. A little Halverson, just good kids. I apologize. We're missing one of their other seniors who, again, on a lot of other teams has been a multi-year starter for them. But I'm just really impressed with the leadership they have and how good of a team. Again, it's one thing to have talent. It's one thing to be a team that plays well together, but when you mix talent and a team that enjoys playing together, now you got something pretty special in a team that's hard to beat, and that's why they've been really hard to beat.
So, actually we've said this for all 3 classes. You've got a top team that really feels like they're the team to beat. How big is that gap in Class B between the Northwestern and the Warners and the Chesters and the Falcons and maybe some of those other contenders?
Instead of the gap, I think something that I kind of think of is now that these other teams are seeing that, Northwestern can be beat. And maybe that gives them confidence instead of thinking of, holy cow, Northwestern hasn't lost since 2018.
Right.
Half these girls weren't even born since then. So
they might have been born in 20. I hope so. But you're right, and that does bring up a great point, is how young some of these teams are. And Warner, first of all, Warner, I think, and again, whenever we say somebody's the best at something, then offend somebody. But I think Warner is probably the best defensive team. Yeah. In Class B, right? The Warner's going to have to do tonight with Northwestern is be able to score the ball better. And they just think, I think right now what makes Northwestern so good is they have the height, and they've always played well, but also probably the tallest team in Class B, and they have the attackers, where Warner, every coach you talk to is like, they are so sound defensively, right? They're playing a little bit of that Huron Tiger volleyball from the past, where just hard for their team to score if the ball doesn't hit the ground, don't make any mistakes. But they're going to, if they would beat Northwestern, they're going to have to figure out a way to score the ball because they're taller in the front line than Warner is. Now, we also know how, just intense that rivalry is. So even last year when those girls were young, they played, you saw in the state tournament in the semifinal, they gave Northwestern by far the biggest scare they had. But they're still so young. Yeah. I think one senior on the team, they There's another 8th grader in the mix. I think the Marcuson girl, Nielsen's a 9th grader now. Feels like we've been talking about her for a decade. And very, very good. It's the Anderson twins that are sophomores now. So they're very, very young, but Warner will always be in there because it's a rivalry and their defense. Chester is a team that continues to get better. I know they dropped a couple matches to Garrettson, but they have a completely new look lineup. And then Fulton probably has the offense of attackers, right? Talk about Fulton a little bit.
Yeah, Melius has been on our radar for years now. Just a really solid offensive player. I think she kind of took steps to kind of up her defensive game in the past couple of years. But Aesop has been a huge, maybe not surprise to us, but I think she's filling in a different role than she was last year. And we've been really impressed by just kind of her aggressiveness. Something that I kind of wish we would see more from Amelia sometimes is just getting after it and swinging hard because she has the power. So I think Fulton's one of those teams where when they get the confidence and they can kind of pick up a few of those defensive plays, I think they could string some points together.
Right, where Fulton probably has more of the offensive game to contend with the Northwestern. They need to improve on the defensive end if they're going to knock them off. Warner might be just the opposite. And Chester's a little bit of everything. They have the, Ellie Pry. They have their returning front row. Ellie Pry and Jada Kenyon, thank you. And then they're mixing in, and then Kenna Brown has been there, setting for them forever. And they're working in some really young players as well. And I mean, really young. They have a little Larson girl playing, I think, libero for them. And so how well did they come along? But again, they maybe have more of the front row attack to go with it. They have to improve on the defensive end. And it's just going to take a lot to knock off a really solid team. But those would be the ones I would say. Bridgewater Emery, right? Bridgewater Emery just lost, I think, Chester knocked them off this weekend for the first time. They're outside that we really like.
Julia Weber's the outside that gets a ton of the swings for them. And then to go along with that, their right side, Taylor Schellenkamp, score a ton of their balls. I'd say the majority of the balls for them. And I talked to Coach Ernster just last week, and she's super, super happy with the way that the season is going for them. Towards the beginning, just really, like I said, building that confidence has been huge for that program. And, she thinks the girls are ready to go and continue this. They've got those wins under their belts. They've got that hot start.
State tournament last year.
Yep.
Right?
They just.
One team, Jason, I talked about surprise Ipswich, and we were able to talk with Coach Osborne. That's a team that just probably more so because of where they play, has been overshadowed. And it's been years, last year, Sodak 16, Burke knocked them off, that great senior class. They have 10 seniors, which is almost unheard of anywhere, especially in a Class B program. And they are that team. I loved it. What did Coach say? We don't want to be the little dog that sits back in the yard. It's time for us to learn how to be the big dog that's out barking at everybody. And I loved that he said that, but he's like, hey, it's our time. He talked about what they can learn when they lose. They lost to Northwestern, Warner back to back. He's like, hey, every time that's happened, this crew's learned. That's a team that has been under the radar forever. You look at the records, they don't have many losses. Just the losses they have are Northwestern, Warner. Right. And so don't sleep on Ipswich, and especially with a veteran crew that is hungry to make that state tournament. I think they're going to be in the picture all year. And, there's just a pack of, again, probably 6 teams. I think seeds 2 through 8 at the state tournament are all going to be very, very good teams, where the 7 seed could end up in the state final match, as easy as the number 2 seed could. It's just, right now it's somebody running down and mentally overcoming that hurdle to knock off the Northwestern.
I'm interested in I just looked at Region 4, Coleman Egan, Elkton, Lake Benton, Del St. Mary. There's some teams on the up and come there too that have surprised me. I don't know if you guys have any comments on any of those teams.
Yeah, we got to see the Lady Elks this weekend. Went 4-0 and won their region of the Pentagon tournament. So they're definitely on a hot streak, and they've got some solid players. Rachel Crow and Hannah Crow, the sisters. I think They have like 4 pairs of sisters on that team. So talk about playing together in chemistry. That's always interesting to have, siblings on the team to really push that aspect of the game. But, they play really well together. And then Coleman Egan, I watched for the first time, I think, ever this weekend, and really impressed with their seniors. And Elizabeth Moore on the outside does a really, really good job. And their defense was really impressive.
Right. Well, and that's what Gene, Chester's coach last year said, watch out for Coleman Egan, because they gave Chester all they could handle, but she's like, they have everybody back. And we just didn't know a lot about them. They've gotten off to a great start. I know they're going to play Chester coming up. And so, a lot of these teams, they're on the up and come, like you had said, it's just, we've talked about this every year. With Class A a few years ago, it was Madison, right? They had to get over the hump of, can we beat Dakota Valley? Can we beat Sioux Falls Christian? Right? Class B, it's, can we knock off Warner? Can we knock off Northwestern? Right? And with so many of these teams, I think in A and in B, it's, can they get that signature win that will give them the confidence to knock off somebody, one of these top 4 teams at the state tournament. And there's a group of 7 or 8 of them that we just look like, okay, this is a measuring stick game. If they can get this, their confidence flips, and they could be a completely new, new team, but they got to get that win. And so until it happens, you're like kind of waiting with bated breath. But there's a pack of Class B schools that any one of them gets that big win, they can really do some damage in November.
All right, that we can't quite mention everybody because there's so many good teams, but that's a lot of contenders in Class B to talk about. Let's move on to the second half of the season. That's kind of our wrap on the first half. What are you guys looking forward to in the second half, as far as players that you want to see, matchups, or maybe even teams that you think are going to take another step up in the second half?
One thing, I'll just touch real quick on the schedule, and then Hayley jump in. One thing, I hope the DAC-12 tournament is still on. It's supposed to be October 17th in Sioux Falls. I think that would be an unbelievable day of volleyball. We talked about that. That's something I'm excited for. One other thing is, we talked about Aberdeen Central with their schedule being a little bit more backloaded, to see how they do the matchup. They're going to have the rematch with Watertown and Huron. I think Huron was on Tuesday, and then they're going to get the matchup there. So seeing if they continue to progress and how they do, maybe get some more ranked teams. And then Rapid City Christian and Hill City coming to the Millette tournament. I think that's also October 17th, but those are some of the matchups I'm most interested to see. What about you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the same thing. Madison at Dakota Valley on October 8th. I think that'll be a huge match for Madison, and then Dakota Valley to see kind of where Wilshire is and maybe where they are in that adjustment period. That'll be a really good kind of measuring stick top level match for them. And then Garrettson at Parker, I believe, is that same weekend as well. But I think that'll be a really good match to catch, to see where Garrettson's at this point in the season too.
One thing I'm looking, when we look at teams that we talked about, one is, if you talk about teams maybe on the uptick, I don't know, but a team we really were high on before the season, Sioux Falls Lincoln. I think as a team, we didn't touch on them with AA, but they have some talent in in Plurd, and I think they have 5 seniors, 4 or 5 seniors on their team. That's a team that and then who am I forgetting? We have Plurd and Whitfield, right, with their center, and then of course Kirsch, Bryn, yeah, and watching them, I think they have the talent. They made the state tournament last year, so that's a team I'm really interested to see how they play the second half of the season. They will be in all their matches, and I think actually getting ready to take on O'Gorman tonight. Warner and Chester in Class B, for the simple fact that I know they're playing quite a few young girls in new positions, so they will be better at the end of the season and play at a much higher level as those girls get experience. Now, some of them are still going to be 7th and 8th graders, which is crazy, but they're going to be more experienced 8th graders, I guess. by that team, and they know how to play hard. So those are just some of the teams. Also, I think Coleman Egan, we touched about, they're going to get a matchup with Chester, which will be a big one. So just some more measuring stick games for all of these teams. And maybe there's a team that lost 3 or 4 starters early in the year. They get healthy at the right time. Right? We've tried not to talk about the big C word at all and stay positive, but it does influence. So it's going to be kind of like pro sports, who's healthy at the right time and who can play together and practice together and it, when November comes around. So those are ones. I don't know if there's any players that we haven't touched on maybe that you can think of.
No, I think, while we were talking about each team, a lot of those teams have those difference makers
Right.
that really play roles for the teams. Just for example, AA, that Jackalenga for Washington, if she can play good defense and continue to work on her offense, I think she makes a huge difference and really ups Washington's game, just again with that huge block, being able to slow down more of those players. But yeah, just so many, like Abby Brooks, if she continues to lead her team and if people can jump on her back, I think she makes a huge difference.
Right. And how does their leadership, be interesting to watch Madison as they go through. They're 7-2, and who are their losses to? I think they've lost to, Northwestern and Sioux Falls Christian. So you can't sleep on them at all. We're interested to watch them as they grow their new setter. But we'll talk later, and we'll touch segments that touch more on those we've talked about names to know, but those difference makers that we talk about that, a show like this, maybe we don't have time to talk about it, but those kids that really are going to be important if they're going to make a postseason run, every team has them, and they, deserve as much recognition. So we'll kind of be watching that. Also, just how well teams are playing together, that chemistry thing, which talent can do everything in the world, but if you don't enjoy playing together, right, you don't have positive leadership, especially in a year like this with so much changes, those teams that have the positive leadership, kids stepping up, right, because every team that we're going to talk about will have a superstar, maybe 2, but they're going to need 3 and 4 if they want to get to the state tournament and then do damage. So those are the things we kind of watch. We're watching film is, okay, we talked about A and B, but how much better is players C and D getting? And some of those teams are, trending up and will continue in the second half.
Well, Darren, Hayley, I can't thank you enough. You guys cover the sport as well as anybody. You can follow Adrenaline Volleyball. Where can they find you guys?
Yeah, so on Instagram, that's going to be adrenaline_volleyball. Patreon is where we kind of do a lot of our longer segments. We've been really enjoying the Coffee with Coaches, just quick phone interview. They kind of spill their guts on all their secrets and trades. So that's a good.
Don't spill your coffee.
Yeah.
On Patreon, and that's patreon.com/adrenaline volleyball. Pretty simple. And then Facebook and Twitter are VB Adrenaline.
Yeah. Just the athletes all follow us on Instagram. The good posts from Hayley, the ones that don't look like they fit in are probably mine. And then the Facebook posts. So we appreciate it. But hey, before we go, I want to give a shout out to you guys because we know that was so awesome last year. And Jace, you and I talked about it, years ago, like having a primetime volleyball match. So thank you to you guys. That was so cool. The Warren Washington match. And I believe the first time you guys have done a live high school match.
Yeah. I mean, we've done all-star games before, but we've never done an in-season match. And I mean, part of it is because our schedule is a little bit lighter. We're not doing college football and college volleyball like we normally do. So I was just happy that the Midco Sports people above me said, here's the green light. And we did it, and we got a ton of feedback from volleyball fans. And that's what I love about volleyball fans. They're so loyal. So hopefully we can do some more of that in the future too, because that was a blast.
Well, Midco people above Jason, we loved it. All right. So thank you. And it's just kind of neat because we talked about that years ago, and it's just like these little steps. And hopefully people on, you guys reach so many more people than our little thing can. And so we appreciated it. And you do an awesome job. So thank you from the sport and the people we heard. It was cool, to watch that. And you did an amazing job. So anything more in the future, you guys just keep it up. You're awesome, buddy.
Well, you guys are too. And like I said, nobody watches it closer than you guys. So if you want to go in depth, head over to Adrenaline Volleyball. that's a look at our first half of the season. I can't wait to see what we've got coming up in the second half. We'll check back with you guys maybe in the postseason. How does that sound?
We'll be here, buddy.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Take care.